Good afternoon and welcome to the Lone Tree City Council study session. It is July 7th, 2020. In order to comply with the 6th amended Public Health Order 20-28, which recommends against government-held meetings of more than 10 people, the city is limiting physical attendance at public meetings to only essential staff, applicants, and elected officials, and will continue to provide access to public meetings via electronic participation for members of the public at this time. All attendees are required to wear face coverings when entering and exiting the building and within 6 feet of another person. The city will also implement symptom monitoring measures for attendees, such as temperature checks and completion of the city's facilities health screening survey before entering the meeting. The City Council does not vote during study sessions since the presentations are for information only. Therefore, there is no public comment during our study sessions. We are going to start our study session this evening with a discussion regarding amended IGA with Douglas County Housing Partnership. Diane Leavesley, the Executive Director of Douglas County Housing Partnership, will be presenting remotely as our first presenter. And Diane, are you ready to go?
I'm ready. Can you hear me and see me?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Okay. Well, tonight we're going to talk about our intergovernmental agreement, but I was also offered the opportunity to give you a general update about what Douglas County Housing Partnership has been accomplishing. So thank you for this opportunity. Starting off with the IGA. In 2003, we were formed as a multi-jurisdictional housing authority by Lone Tree, Castle Rock, Parker, and Douglas County. And then earlier this year, in 2020, the city of Castle Pines approached us about also becoming a governmental member of Douglas County Housing Partnership. So we reviewed our intergovernmental agreement, which was written back in 2003, to see what it said about admitting new members. Well, the IGA had a lot more in it than an IGA usually has. And because we were reading it carefully, what we saw was that the dates on the IGA showed that it was written before bylaws were even written for our organization back in 2003. So we found a lot in it that you wouldn't normally find in an IGA. And then we also found that there were just things that weren't really reflective of the way we were operating. So that led us to rewrite it. And we wanted to give Castle Pines a better document. So we went to our legal counsel to rewrite the IGA, taking out what would more typically be found in bylaws. And then also he verified that we were up to date with state statute. Being a multi-jurisdictional housing authority, there's actually statute that's pretty specific to what we have to have in our IGA. So based on that, our board reviewed it in several meetings, and then we have provided it to each of the jurisdictions, yourselves, Castle Rock, Parker, the county, and the city of Castle Pines, with the idea that everyone has the opportunity to provide input, and then if they find the document acceptable, or if there are some changes that they want, that we'd have time for that discussion. And after that, we would ask that it be brought back to be approved. So where we are in this stage is it's been reviewed by each of the jurisdictions and their attorneys, and we have gotten a few modifications requested. And I don't know, like, have you all gotten a copy of it? Yes. Okay.
Yes.
So do you want me to take questions on it, or do you want me to go ahead and do the general update about Douglas County Housing Partnership and then, do discussion at the end? How do you want to do it?
Let me just pause and we'll ask council if there are any questions, and if not, we'll proceed to the update. So okay. Council, any questions? Wynn.
Thanks. I simply have a comment that I appreciate Diane's time, the attorney for the partnership, Linda Mischow for Lone Tree and other jurisdictions, for taking a really close look at this and doing some revisions. It was really a productive effort, and I personally feel very comfortable with the document as it is.
Thanks, Jay.
None for me.
No, I think we all want to echo thanks, the thanks that Wynn offered, and also just say we are excited about welcoming another partner always to the table. And I think we get a lot done in Douglas County through collaboration, and this is another good acknowledgement of that. So with that, Diane, if you would go start on the update.
Okay, if someone could put the PowerPoint up to the beginning. I can see it, but it isn't at the beginning. How does that work? Okay, keep going.
There you go.
One more.
There it is.
And then I don't think I have control of it, so I will just say ready to turn the page, okay?
Perfect.
That's correct. Thanks, Diane.
Okay, so go ahead and turn to the first page. This is just to show the 4 partners that are currently involved in the Douglas County Housing Partnership and who have been since 2003. And then the next page shows that we are soon to have the City of Castle Pines as part of our multi-jurisdictional housing authority. So go ahead. And then the services that we provide to the citizens of our county include reverse mortgage counseling, foreclosure mitigation counseling, homebuyer education classes and credit counseling, home ownership program, which is essentially our down payment assistance program where we provide funds for a first-time homebuyer to buy their house. Rental housing, we're involved with several partnerships with developers and we own one property of our own. And then we're also an issuer of private activity bonds. Go ahead. So what I've done is I've got a slide for each of the services that we provide. And it shows you for the past 5 years how many people we've helped in the county and how many people we've helped in Lone Tree. And I thought I would point out that even though the numbers don't look very big in Lone Tree, your population is about 4 to 4.5% of the entire county's population. So when you put these numbers of how many people we're helping, they actually work out to be, in this slide, the average is 5%. So pretty much the same percentage as the folks that are your percent of the population. For reverse mortgage counseling, if you're a senior over the age of 62 and you need or want to take equity out of your home, it's a requirement that you go through a counseling session before you can do that. And there's a couple reasons for that. One is to make sure that you fully understand what you're doing and that you have the capacity to understand what you're doing. So up until COVID, we were only doing these kinds of counselings in our office because we wanted to have the opportunity to look somebody in the eye and make sure that they were getting what we were saying. Unfortunately, we are now doing this over the phone. Okay, next. For foreclosure mitigation counseling, this slide gives you a chance to see that things have truly improved since 2008, the last time the real estate market went through a lot of difficulty. And we are pretty much leveling out at helping in the range of 60 people a year in the county who get into issues with their mortgage lender, usually because of health issues or job loss. We are currently talking to a fair number of people about their situation right now, but as you know, almost all of the lenders are allowing people time to not pay in full on their mortgage due to the coronavirus issues. And so mostly right now, we're not in actual foreclosure mitigation counseling with these people. We're just answering questions again on the phone about their situations. Okay, next. For home buyer education, we provide a class once a month on Saturday, and it's been typically attended by a good 40 to 50 people. We now can only have 10 in the room. So over, these past 5 years, you can see that we've been having a lot of attendance from Douglas County residents who are interested in learning, what do I need to know about buying a home and continuing to own and maintain it? What do I need to know about working with a lender and my realtor? And this is a class that is about a 6-hour class. What we've been doing again since the pandemic is we're offering the class again, but only to 10 people at a time, and we're offering it online. And we used to offer it online at a price, and it's currently online for free. So go ahead and do the next one. Our home ownership program is our down payment assistance program. And what this shows you is how many families we've been able to help get into a home over the last 5 years. The numbers are relatively small compared to what we've done even historically before 2015. And the issue is that the federal funds that we use for down payment assistance have a maximum home price. And unfortunately, in Douglas County, we're bumping it up against that on a regular basis. So we have a hard time helping people get into a home. Where we were usually doing single family homes in the past, most of the time now we're helping people get into a condominium. And the next one. So I put this one in just to give you an idea of some of the down payment assistance help that we've done and what kind of job they have and where they're working, just to get a feel for who comes to us for this kind of help. And the next one is just a picture of some of the places that we've been able to help people get into. All right, moving on. We, as I mentioned earlier, work with developers who build what is called LIHTC, Low Income Housing Tax Credit Rental Properties. And this gives you a list of the projects on top where we have been involved as a special limited partner, and then telling you that we have one under construction working with Shea Properties on the Audrey, which will be senior housing in Highlands Ranch, and soon to be constructed South Range Crossings with 204 units in Stroh Ranch in Parker, and Apex Meridian South, which will actually be the third phase of an apartment project on the north end of Meridian. Okay, next. I mentioned that we also own a property. It's the Oakwood Senior Apartments in Castle Rock. This is a property that was built in 1983 to 85, and then we bought it in 2006 and have been operating it ever since. 2 years ago, we approached the town of Castle Rock about building another building on the site. A couple of reasons for that. One is there was excess land because this was 64 units on over 4 acres. And the other is that this was senior housing in buildings that don't have elevators. And so everybody wanted the first floor. We got approval. We had to amend our PUD to add a 53 unit, 3-story building with elevators, and that's what you see shown in the front there. And then the little squares around it are the existing buildings, which we will continue to operate. So we'll have a total of 109 units on the site instead of 64. And we're working on closing our financing on that and hope to start construction in September. Next slide. You have to be celebrating that Coble received 9% tax credit award for the Ridgegate apartments. And I'm happy to report that Carl Coble and myself are talking about a potential partnership with them. We would enter as a special limited partner. And then next slide. I like to put this in here because this gives you a chance to see the advantage that the tax credit rents give to a family. So what I'm showing you on the top under market rent are rents in a property that has both 60% tax credit and market rents. And that property is in Parker. They charge about $1,300 for a 1-bedroom, and someone who gets one of the tax credit property or units, excuse me, can save almost $2,000 a year. And then in a 3-bedroom, there's even more significant savings, where the annual savings to the family is almost $5,000 a year, and you can only imagine what that does to help with childcare costs, medical costs, clothing costs, all of the things that come with needing a 3-bedroom. In the lower part, what I show you is that in some of our properties, the Coble property, our Oakwood, another one, Auburn Ridge in Castle Rock, have rents that are at 30%, 40%, 50%, and 60% of the area median income. And I'm just giving you this to show how much the rent would be and the income level, the maximum income that the family can make based on the number of people in their family. And I'll move to the next one, but we can always go back to any of these slides if you have questions. And then the next slide is to tell you that at this point, Lone Tree doesn't receive a private activity bond cap allocation because you're population size. But when you reach a larger size, usually it's around 40 to 50,000, then you receive a private activity bond cap allocation from the state. And at this point, Castle Rock, Parker, and the county all receive that, and they have been not needing or using their private activity bond cap. And so at the end of every year, they've been transferring it to us. We're allowed to amass it for 3 years and then offer it to a developer to use to build their apartments. And this shows you that we have helped with the construction of Copper Step and Apex Meridian East, as well as the Audrey, which is currently under construction. And we have commitments to work with a developer in Castle Rock for Bridgewater Castle Rock, which will be actually assisted living, and then Apex Meridian South, which will be another family property on the north end of Meridian. So all of this, you provide us with $35,000 annually, with an estimated population in Lone Tree of about 14,634, and I think I got that off your website. Basically, for $2 a person of your population, we're ready and doing the kinds of things that I showed in this slideshow. And that's all I have, and I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have.
Wonderful. Thank you, Diana. And I have an echo. Any questions from Council? Mike, I'll start with you.
Not a specific question, but I've had the pleasure of attending a number of the meetings of the partnership as an alternate from the council, and are just amazed at the outstanding work that the partnership is doing for the county and for the specific entities that are involved. With a very small staff, we have some very dedicated people that are working very hard to help people in the low-income area to find attainable housing in Douglas County. So thank you, Diane, for everything you do.
Oh, thank you. We're glad you can be part of our meetings, Mike.
Kathy.
Thank you, Diane. So I do get quite a bit of outreach asking for information about exactly what the partnership does, the housing partnership does. So it's been super helpful for me, and certainly we'll continue to push people your way as we get requests for this kind of data. I do think it is a big issue for us here locally, and so I'm just thrilled that we have the ability to have someone really focused on this as a strategy, and we're really grateful for what you do.
Thank you, and I'm always willing to answer questions, so you can send them my way too.
And Wynn is our representative for the Douglas County Housing Partnership, so I'm going to skip over her, let her have a last word before me. But Jay, anything?
Yeah, thanks again, Diane, for the information. It's certainly a well-needed product. I'm just curious, how does Douglas County relate to other counties within the metro area in terms of number of units per capita, in essence, based on population? How are we trending along the average, or are we higher, lower, you know?
Certainly compared to Denver County, we're much lower. Compared to other suburban counties, we are still lower, but think about it. We were only started in 2003, and the population was so small then that we've been playing catch up ever since. And I don't know, I guess I'm feeling like, no, we don't have enough, but yes, we are developing good relationships with good developers who are interested in working here. And I just think that, we have a lot of opportunity in the future to continue to add rental housing, and hopefully someday we can figure out some programs for sale housing.
Great, thank you.
And we want to thank Wynn for her great service on behalf of the city of Lone Tree to the Douglas County Housing Partnership. Wynn, do you have any thoughts? I have a couple questions, but.
Sure. It's been a pleasure to serve as the board chair as well, and I have learned considerable amount during my time with the partnership, and we do so many good things for people. It is one of those feel-good organizations, and just wish we were able to help more people. And we may have that opportunity as Lone Tree expands and Castle Pines and some of the other areas in Douglas County. So thank you for your work, and for Artie and Tony. It's a wonderful, wonderful support group. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And again, Diane, thank you so much. And thanks for being here tonight to kind of share a little more with us. I do have a question, and I always like to note that I appreciate the $2.39 per resident figure, but it's important to recognize that all of the municipalities pay the same $35,000. So I can only imagine that Castle Rock and Parker are getting screaming deals because it's got to be below in the sense. I think we're proud to be full partners, and we would never suggest we don't pay that full amount. But I do think it's incumbent upon us to make sure our residents are aware of the programs being offered and are able to take full advantage of those programs. And to that end, I would like to I'd like to push a little and say, how can we make sure that Lone Tree residents are fully aware of the opportunities that may be available to them? And I recognize that the cost of housing in our community is really even more challenging for a lot of the people that live in our community. We are one of the more expensive areas in Douglas County. So I would love to see a little bit more work done in Lone Tree. And to that point, Can we get in line for access to those private activity bonds? We know there are some additional low-income housing projects that are going to be coming forward on the east side of I-25. So can we get a placeholder to say, you know, we've been paying since 2003, we've been paying as a full partner, and I think we've done more than our fair share. So how do we get access how do we get better access? So we're building those projects in Lone Tree in partnership with you. We very much appreciate Ridgegate and Coventry's good work to bring a project to us, but they did that kind of without the housing partnership. How can we leverage our relationship better?
Well, in regard to asking for private activity bond cap, we have been working on essentially a first come, first served basis. So if there's any developer who's looking at land in Lone Tree, they just need to bring their project requests to us, and we do a resolution that puts them in line for the available bond cap as soon as they show that they need it. What our development policy basically says that we're happy to provide the funds as long as the project needs our assistance, which they basically all do, because you can't make these things work otherwise. And then we get them in line. So that part's not hard at all. The difficulty is going to be finding, I think, land that makes sense, that they can afford to do a project. And I'm going to, if I have another minute, I'm going to share something with you. The group that I'm working with in Parker, Dominium, they came to me recently saying that they're interested in doing rental housing that would serve people at 80 to 100% of the area median income, not using tax credits and not using private activity bonds. But there's basically some ways that they can get some lower cost financing through CHAFA. And I have to say that when they told me that, Lone Tree is what popped into my head, because I think that, you know, we only really have, almost all of our properties are serving 60% of the area median income, which is, you know, still people earning like $40,000, $50,000. But if we can increase that, I think that more of your residents would find the help between the amount they're paying in a market rate apartment and what we could do would make sense. So I hope I've answered your question. They can be in line anytime, just come talk to us. And we're looking at some other options that may even work better for Lone Tree.
Great, thanks, Diane. And then the only other question, and I know Wynn is going to follow up on all this for me, but is with our Tall Tales Ranch, which is for, is there an opportunity for the housing partnership to work with them and support their effort to build housing for neuroatypical young adults?
You know, we would love to bring that kind of housing to the county. And I would say that if you were going to support it, that would really help, because I think that what you run into sometimes are neighbors who don't want to support that type of thing, and you wouldn't have that in its location. And right. As the city, you want it. So there are programs that we could help you with that are going to be more like the 9% tax credit deals, but then we have to find additional soft funds to make them work. And they're out there.
What about the private activity bonds for them?
Well, it's going to depend. Most of the time, maybe I don't know enough about how they would do it, but I'm thinking that they might not have enough income to make the private activity bond deal work.
Okay. Well, I think there's conversations that probably could be had around that, and just wanted to raise it with you tonight when I had the opportunity to. So I think, but I'm very hopeful based on what I've heard. And again, I want to say a huge thank you. And staff, is there any questions you have or anything I didn't ask that I should have, the council, anything else to add to it? Okay, well, we're going to move on then. But thank you so much, Diane. Really appreciate it. And we'll look forward to talking to you soon.
Okay, and I'm happy to do this whenever you like.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Uh-huh.
Okay. Moving on to our update regarding the Southwest Village development, and Kelly first, and Justin Schmitz are going to start that. Schmitz, sorry, Justin. And thanks, Kelly.
Thank you. So happy to be here tonight and be able to present an overview of the process for this exciting new residential community on the east side of I-25. As you know, Coventry has announced Shea Homes as the master planner for this community and the primary builder. So we're pleased to be working with them. We've had the pleasure to work with both Shea and Coventry over the course of the last several months on kind of a pre-submittal basis. And we're just very excited to now be getting close to having an actual formal application come before the city, which will be for a preliminary plan. That's that subdivision application. That I'll talk a little bit more about. And we understand that they do intend to submit that around July 15th, so very soon. So in anticipation of that, we thought tonight was a good opportunity to come before you and give you a sense of kind of planning that has been going on to date, and also some of the related items that are associated with this project that you'll hear a little bit about tonight, but certainly more as we go through the process in the coming weeks and months. So Justin and I will tag team the staff presentation, but I do want to acknowledge that Keith Simon is here tonight, as is Tim Roberts, who is the Vice President for Shea Homes, Colorado. And also Ryan McDermott is here, I believe, plugged into the team's meeting in the event that you do have any questions that staff is not able to answer. Yeah, great. So the purpose of tonight really is, I just want to be clear, it's not to present the project itself. It's not to, invite discussion about the details of the project at all, but rather, again, to give you some general information and background about the process that has been going on and an overview of some of the elements that are related to it. So once Shea does submit their application to the city, a formal public review process will kick off, and that will include a public referral period, planning commission meeting, city council meeting, and so on. So we want to respect that future public process and kind of keep the discussion about the project itself kind of limited tonight. Next slide. So in terms of some background and timeline to date, there's been, like I said, a tremendous amount of coordination that has been going on and collaboration, I should say, between Coventry, Shea, and city staff, all departments in the city really, as well as our partner service providers, and particularly with South Suburban. Because of the size and scope of the project, we and Shea and Coventry all felt that it was going to be really mutually beneficial to meet early on this project and work through as many issues, first of all, identify the issues and work through as many of them as we could early on, so that when we get to that formal application, it is hopefully as quick and predictable as possible. So we first met with Shea back in February of 2019.
The good old days.
I know, hundreds of years ago. But we looked at their concept plans, of course, at that time and met our respective teams. And during that 16-month now period, staff has met pretty regularly with Shea, almost on a monthly basis or more if needed, and getting together with those other service providers. Mainly planning and public works have led the effort of coordination with Shea, but like I said, it certainly involved all aspects of city departments. So some of the things that we've talked about in these meetings range from really just working through the city's planning, engineering, and building permit processes, their proposed land use plan, their roadway layout, design and trail systems, parks and open space, the relationship of the project with the city's future regional park, school dedication with the school district, infrastructure planning, grading, lighting, I mean, you name it, probably many other things that I'm forgetting right now. But again, the goal was to be as proactive as we could. And I really just want to take this time to commend Shay and their team. They've been so receptive to comments that staff has been making and willing to either adapt their plans or at least look into an issue and be responsive. So we really, really appreciate that. Also just wanted to give a shout out to our staff. I mean, this is a huge project and it's going to really take continued effort, but it has involved a lot of organization and attention to detail so far. So Jennifer Drybread and more recently Roshana on our staff and Jacob James, our city engineer, have really taken the lead on this project and we'll kind of see it through. So shout out to them. So assuming that Shay submits in the next week or so, we expect that the preliminary plan application should take about 3 or 4 months to get through the public process, including review before the Planning Commission and City Council, and that could conceivably, can you click one more time? Perfect. It'll be concluded, we think, by the end of 2020. And that might also include the first final plat or the first phase of their development at that time as well. Next slide. Okay, so where is the Southwest Village? I think most of you are familiar with this, but this is an image from the East Villages sub-area plan. As you'll recall, the planning concept for the villages, or for the east side rather, is to kind of identify these various villages throughout the east side in addition to the city center. The Southwest Village is depicted in green here, and it just is a way to think about these different areas and plan according to the neighborhoods. Again, the idea was that these are surrounded around this more commercial couplet district, around Ridgegate Parkway couplet. And in this particular, Southwest Village is adjacent to the future regional park for the city and Schweiger Ranch as well. Next slide. This map is also from the village's sub-area plan, and again, just begins to show how this village is situated relative to some other things. So it's really kind of bound by Happy Canyon Creek on the west, Badger Gulch on the east, the bluffs to the south, and then Ridgegate Parkway to the north. Next slide. So this is the latest concept of Shay's plan. It does include the regional park, just for reference there, but that is not their responsibility to develop, but it's certainly something we've been coordinating with them on, given the proximity. I will caveat this and future images by saying these are conceptual, these are subject to change. I'm really just showing them to give you a sense of kind of what we're talking about here. So the different colors are just intended to show the variety of product types that Shay is planning, ranging from single family detached homes to attached and to multifamily projects as well. All told, this is about 300 acres, and there will be, we think, a total of about 1,900 residential units. So you can see too that, you know, this plan is accounting for not only the lots and the neighborhoods within this village, but the school site, the park sites, the road connectivity, the trails, and on and on. So that's kind of what I mean when I refer to all of the different planning elements that are going into this. This project, we think, will be built out over the course of probably 5 years or so. This map happens to represent, again, the conceptual phasing plan, with the first phase shown in light green. Okay, well, let's move on to the next slide. Just to touch again on the process, you'll remember a couple weeks back or so when I gave a presentation about this subdivision process, and that's really what we're talking about here with Shay. It's 2 steps. The first is this preliminary plan application, which you can think of as a master plan for the entire area. And then if that is approved, subsequently there will be final plats. So more of the engineering documents associated with each phase, and those will come in again over the course of the next few years. Attached products, commercial products, multifamily projects will also then be subject to the city's site improvement plan. Single family detached are not. Next. Just wanted to throw this in here again, recalling the pre-COVID time when we could all get together, and many of you have met out on the property. Again, we're so appreciative of Coventry and Shay's time. These visits have been so valuable, and we hope we can do a few more in the future. But we've been out there with the Planning Commission, the Rec Advisory Committee, members of council as well. And really, you just don't have a sense of the size and scale of this property until you kind of get out there and see it. So it's been really interesting. Next slide. Okay, so some of the things that are also related to this project, in addition to the preliminary plan, are listed here. And I'm going to run through these really, really fast, just in consideration of time. But know that we will, most likely be coming back before council to drill down into each of these in a little more detail. There are things like a master development agreement that we're working on between the city and Shea, master local parks plan, airport issues, the subject of accessory dwelling units, the transportation network, and the technical supplement. Next slide. So to begin, this master developer agreement is something that we will be coming back to council with, but really what this is just an agreement between the city and Shea Homes, and it's going to address all of those different commitments, processes, and timing related to the project and public improvements that are, pertain to the overall site. This is considered like an overarching development agreement, and then as subsequent phases come in, as subsequent builders come in, there will be what's called subdivision improvement agreements subsequent to that. But it's really, again, kind of putting on paper our mutual understanding of all of these different protocols, commitments, and so on. Next. One of the more interesting things that's unique to this project and the East Side villages in the future too is the idea of a local parks master plan. So this, again, is kind of over and above the preliminary plan, but running alongside it. And the intent here is to really just, first of all, ensure that the project is meeting the minimum local park dedication requirements of our zoning and our sub-area plans, and that's based on population. So we're looking at that, but we're also looking to make sure that the park system itself is planned as a system, and that it's consistent with South Suburban's vision, with the city's vision, and with the builder's vision, and provide something, a little bit of something for everybody in that park system. So you can see here, again, conceptually, Shea has identified, in addition to the regional park on this plan, you can see Park A, B, and C, which are 3 local parks within this community, in addition to the Village Park, which will be a private facility. But I'll just run through these concepts really, really quickly. Yeah, go ahead, Jay. So Park A, for example, this is a concept for that location. This is perfectly situated right adjacent to the regional park, as well as the school site, to take advantage of those joint use opportunities in the future. We think that this, might be more family oriented, have play fields, and just be more of an active park. Next slide. The one in the more central portion of the project is planned to really be more of a community-focused park and offer gathering places and really be that launching pad to access the trail system on the bluffs on the east side. Next. And then the local Park C, we got to come up with some better names here, obviously. Park C, this is going to be right adjacent to Badger Gulch, and it's going to have that more natural feel, we think. But again, these are concepts. These are still being vetted through South Suburban, which I understand their board is going to be looking at these in concept tomorrow night. Our Recreation Advisory Committee is going to be looking at these. And the process really, as outlined in our sub-area plan for these local parks, is that the Recreation Advisory Committee will make a recommendation to the City Council. So this master plan for parks will come back to the City Council at some point along with the preliminary plan for your final approval. I think I had one more slide in here, and that one was just in reference to they will have this private community clubhouse area within the community as well. So that's it for parks. I just wanted to quickly mention, this property is in proximity to the airport. There are some issues that we wanted to head off as much as possible with respect to the FAA. Without getting into a lot of detail, we have some requirements already in our regulatory documents about notifying that applicants need to notify the FAA if it's possible that the structure of the building could interfere. So it's a kind of a height issue. And so we've been working with Coventry to really hash out a better way of gauging whether or not someone is going to be subject to that process, so that we can let people know as soon as possible, because it can be a very long process through the FAA. And so, and also with Linda's office, developing what's basically a certification, attesting to the fact that, they don't have to go through the FAA process. So it's kind of a system that takes the guesswork out of staff determining whether or not a project has to go to the FAA or not. So again, you'll see more information about that in the technical supplement eventually as well. The other airport-related issue is obviously noise, and we have certainly addressed some of that already in our building code, in our sub-area plan, and the idea is to just notify prospective residents in as many ways as possible that they're near an airport and there's going to be impacts. We have requirements for a site improvement plan note, a plat note, and that this information be included in contracts and at closing. We all know that sometimes those documents are overwhelming, people don't read them, and then when the property is sold, that resale buyer does not see those. So Coventry has come up with a way to kind of close that gap for the resale buyers, and has agreed to do a private covenant, essentially notifying all property owners in their title work that there are airport impacts. So that's already been recorded. We're very pleased with the progress that's been made on that front, along with Centennial Airport. They've been a great partner in helping us develop these solutions. Next slide. And then finally, for my part, I just wanted to mention accessory dwelling units. You might recall this is something that city supported by virtue of including the ability to do ADUs, as they're called, in this area. It's in our sub-area plan, and we were pleased to hear that Shea is exploring products that will build in these ADUs right from the beginning, which is ideal. We're learning more about the market on ADUs, particularly with the pandemic. It's been interesting to see how people are adapting and will continue to adapt given these different conditions. So as we learn more about this, we're learning that we might need to tweak some of the things in our sub-area plan to remove barriers. And that's something that we certainly want to come back to council with and let you know what we've learned, what Shea is proposing, and see how we can get to the right solution with ADUs. So with that, I will turn it over to Justin. He's going to talk more about the transportation side of the project, as well as the technical supplement.
I have a question.
Sure.
You know what? Before you go, I would like to give council the opportunity to ask any questions. You kind of went through a lot. So are there anything that anyone would like to dig into a little bit more?
Well,
Mike.
in terms of the process, I appreciate all the information about the airport and the FFA in terms of noise control and the height issues. As we developed, there are also issues over water and surface water management and Happy Canyon Creek and Badger Gulch, and how that, both in terms of storm control, flood control, and quality as it relates to Cherry Creek Reservoir down the road. So I assume that's all built into the process too, in terms of what happens to the natural environment as it gets developed and what happens to waters.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's a great point. And they're one of those service partners that have been at the table since the beginning. In at least the first phases, it relates to the Happy Canyon Creek and planning for the regional park and the detention for this project. Moving forward, there's going to be more related to the specific development and Badger Gulch, but you're absolutely right. That is another important element and partner that we're working with.
No, okay. Well, I was happy to see pickleball pictured because I've been getting more pickleball requests than I know what to deal with. So we need to make that a reality. But the other question I had, a couple questions. One is, I assume there's going to be HOAs associated with each of these. When does that get decided, and how does that? We've got neighborhoods in Lone Tree that have HOAs and that don't have HOAs, and we all know it works better when there is an HOA. So
yes.
Will there be HOAs associated with each of these developments, yes. And it will be the entire Southwest Village, or will it be individual projects within the village that have the HOAs?
Yeah, no, that's a great point, and it's something that we wanted to make sure wasn't missed. My understanding is there will be a master association for the Southwest Village, and that the individual neighborhoods, I'm not sure how they're exactly divided up, would have sub-associations. And that is something that we're also including in the development agreement, just to make sure that that is a requirement.
Great. And then with the accessory dwelling units, I think it is great if they can be built at the time. I think, will those be communities that have HOAs, that have ADUs, will deal with the issues around parking for the AD? I mean, I know the city will have our requirements as well, but we also know parking is a huge issue that comes back to council a lot with frustrations in communities about in neighborhoods about parking. And I want to make sure that we've got a process in place within the HOAs for the parking issues to be dealt with at that level. So I guess I want to just add that footnote in there as well. I'm just reviewing my notes, but I think that's it. And if I can think of something else, I'll
Well, yeah,
I know where to find you. I know where to find you.
More
All
to
right.
come. Okay.
Thanks, Kelly. All right, Justin, you know I want to hear about this transportation. So we hardly recognize you with the beard. I don't know.
Good evening, Mayor and members of City Council. It's been a while since you've seen me. I've grown a beard since.
Yeah.
It's been a few weeks.
Had a few more children.
Thankfully not. Yeah.
Sorry.
No, it's great to see you all, and I'm very excited to present today a little bit of the detail, really the technical side of what we've been working on. The Public Works staff has been spending a lot of time going through a lot of meetings. You hit on some of it: drainage, some of the issues we have at Canyon Creek, transportation, details of cross sections. A lot of great work, and it's been a very productive process. Our new city engineer, Jacob James, came in, it's taken off and run and really helped to kind of get everything cleaned up, and it's been a great working relationship. So I just want to start and echo what Kelly had mentioned before. So we're going to start with the next one. There we go. So the transportation network, there is going to be a traffic study that will be provided as part of really the technical supplements for the Southwest Village. There was a master study that was done for the entire East Side Village. Obviously, that's a much bigger picture. And what we're doing here is we're finding in exactly what is coming in the Southwest Village and what will that look like on the transportation network. That's still in process. It's been a lot of good, again, work by both the city and the team to go through that, but we'll continue to refine that as we move forward. The focuses of that, obviously, it's going to be focused on both local and regional connectivity. We want to make sure we have local connectivity into the communities, but we also are doing a very large regional project right now, as anybody has seen that's driven Ridgegate Parkway, getting it wide into 6 lanes to accommodate that regional need as well as that local access that's going to come into that roadway. In addition, it is not only going to be focused on one mode of travel. Obviously, there's a lot of people. We have direct access to light rail stations, to great trail systems. So there's going to be a focus on the multimodal network of this area. And we have some information to show you as we move forward on that. Next slide. So this is sort of the original roadway plan that was thought of for the East Side Southwest Village. This was obviously kind of the initial thinking process that went in. I just want to show this real quick as we go to the next slide, which is going to show much more of what the current design is. So again, the main goal is here you have a few collectors and a bunch of local roads that do provide connectivity out to the community and do provide connection to the light rail station. As you can see, this is, again, a very draft roadway plan. This is still in process and being worked through. But at the high level, there we go. At the high level, you are looking at really 2 major collectors that would continue through this community. One from Havana going north-south and connecting to Ridgegate Parkway. Another one that would be going east-west that would connect from Havana Street at the light rail station and connect back into Ridgegate Parkway. There was a lot of iterations of some of these to make it really be the most efficient system that could allow transportation, but also allow access. And I believe this is a strong alignment of those needs together and trying to make sure that you can have that access. You can see the local roadways are built off of that network and system, and they all kind of provide that same regional connectivity and trying to provide access that will work for all. We have seen the initial, numbers of this, and everything does look like it will work very efficiently. Okay, next one. Again, we do not only want to focus on the roadways and the streets, but also the multimodal connectivities of this area. You can see here, there's a whole lot of information on here, but this is the draft of the bike and ped plans. Again, what this is starting to lay out is where all the bikeways are going to be implemented, both bike networks, both trail connections. You can see one thing to highlight is the pink dashed line on the very bottom of the screen, that is the east-west trail. So that is something that is actually being constructed by Douglas County. They're currently right now in the process of getting ready to construct that. So that is going to extend from the existing section that was completed last summer and continue up the bluffs and over to connect over to Parker. You can see a lot of the trails and other amenities are going to be built to connect to that. So again, it's creating this whole consistent multimodal network. There's a bunch of circles on this map. Again, these are details we're working through, but the intent here is we really want to focus on the crossings, where all these bikes and peds are going to cross the roadway network. We've had a lot of learning lessons from the past and experiences we've had in developing other areas. And we know we don't want to come back and try to retrofit those if we can do it, right? Let's get ahead of it, try to find the best way to make those safe crossings as we move forward. So that's a lot of the work that's been going on, and you'll continue to see refined as we move forward. So now I'm going to switch to the technical supplement. So the technical supplement is pretty much what it's called, a technical supplement. But to remind everyone, the Ridgegate East Technical Supplement was signed on March 20th, 2018 as part of the approval of the sub-area plan for the East Villages. What this document provided was really the technical information in support of the Ridgegate East City Center and East Village sub-area plans. So what this document does, it gets into the very fine details. What kind of speed limit should be on local roads? What kind of curbs should you have? What kind of curb ramps, right? On very, very technical information that's going into this document to support all the design work that our teams have been going through throughout this entire process. Next slide. Again, that was a document that was in 18. We have learned a lot of things in the 2 years since then, and as we started to develop out the plans for the Southwest Village, we understand that we'll need some amendments to that. So really the first amendment to this technical supplement will be completed in coordination with the timing of the development in the Southwest Village sub-area. It provides us an opportunity to kind of update a lot of those sections to current standards at the same time, as well as bring in the expertise of Shea Holmes and others who brought in some great ideas at how we can really develop this area out. This will help, oh, sorry, I was only through one so far. This will help better define and also set a baseline for the technical criteria to be applied to the other future East Side villages. So again, this is really the first shot we've all had at developing some of these technical criteria that are going to dictate the path that a lot of these future villages are going to follow. So it's an exciting time for the technical staff to be working through these things and really get a chance to help build up a whole new community. This will also include the submittal of several appendixes that were not originally approved in 2018. So in 2018, there's, and I'll go through these quickly right after this, but there's a whole bunch of appendices. Some of them were approved, some of them were kind of deferred because they made a lot more sense, for example, street lighting, to find out what it was going to look like at the right time. So I'm going to go through those on these next slides, just to give you a little information on that. So everyone that you see in red is one of the appendices that was not approved originally in 2018, just to help kind of put context to it. Each one of these, we are currently working through some of the details and updating them, and these will be presented in more detail at a future study session for council to get some more feedback on these at a more detailed level. But first of all, we're going to be focused on the streetlight standards. We've had a lot of great innovations in street lighting. So we are talking about LED lights, smart technologies, things we can do to really make the lighting and all the other things that go along with that consistent on that side of the city. Appendix B is the master traffic study. We talked about that. That will be updated and amended to reflect the details that are provided as part of the Southwest Village Plan. Again, you'll continue to see other updates. All these sections will have updates, Appendix C and D, as we've learned new things about cross sections and roadway design that we'll be implementing. Those will be reflected in the updates to those appendices. Appendix E, that one's got a long name, specialty walks, non-standard pavement, and hardscape policy. What that basically means is how do we want to develop out those other amenities, right, in the areas, and how do we take learning lessons that we potentially, don't want to repeat again as we move forward. So there's always great ideas that sometimes when you put them into action or implement them, you realize that maybe there's more maintenance or more other things that were there, and we want to make sure we clean those up as we move forward onto the east side. One more slide. So Appendix F, bicycle lanes and urban trail construction details. Again, this is really going to be focused on how do we connect all those bike lanes on our streets and the urban trail as well as the crossings. We, again, want to focus on ways we can enhance those crossings. One thing minor we talked about, maybe we build some bulb outs at certain locations to make those crossings narrower, or we already know they're going to be in place. So these are some real creative ideas the teams have come up with to put those in.
Very
Continuing
creative
down.
spelling
Yes.
with technology.
Yeah, we're working on spell check technology.
That is correct.
I was like, wow.
I always
really
like to put one in
advancing.
and see if you can find it. So we'll jump down to Appendix I, the Sustainability and Technology Strategy. So the other two are coming in. That's probably the one that has the most work to be done. The teams are really looking through what that looks like as we develop it. And both of those items, sustainability and technology, are constantly changing in the environment. There's a lot of great new technology and ideas. And we're working through that right now to really see how we can make that appendice reflect the goals and visions of everybody in the city and be consistent with new technologies. And those are going to be things like we talked about, smart streetlights, some of our adaptive technology, things we've already implemented, but also new things that we would want to continue to push forward. And the last appendix there, Appendix J, that is the FAA Part 77 notification services map, the one we've been talking about. That will also require an update as we go through this process. I know there's a lot of information, but I did just want to kind of remind, I know maybe not everyone's familiar with all these appendices. I had to look them up myself again to make sure. So, these are things that we'll continue to refine, and we will be bringing these back for more detail as we move forward. Last slide. So really the next steps, this list, next steps, this could have been like 80 slides with how much has to happen. But we wanted to focus on two, really, the official submittal of the preliminary plans, and then the review and approval process that Kelly talked about. And the second really part we're going to be focusing on is really the further discussion on the technical guidance and appendices to make sure those follow along and match up, and those will be presented back to council as we refine them. So again, there's a lot more to provide that, but this is a high level to kind of make sure we reintroduce the ideas.
Great.
And with that, does anybody have questions for either myself or Kelly?
Questions for Justin? Anybody? Yeah, Mike, go ahead.
Just a general question in terms of process and development.
Yep.
There's no public out there right now, so it's kind of grassroots. You have the advantage of doing it all in-house and with the expertise that's available to put the best product together. Is there anywhere in this process that public does make input as you're going through the process?
Probably kick down over the expert Kelly on that. That's a great question.
Thank you. Yes, absolutely. The preliminary plan, once it's submitted and reviewed by staff, it will go out on a referral process. So we make sure that our existing HOAs, for example, are contacted. The adjoining, like the county, for example, and that this information is posted on our website, and anyone who subscribes, to get this type of information currently will have access to it on the website as well. We are going to have public meetings, of course, before the Planning Commission and before the City Council as well. And so there's a few different, steps along the way where people can certainly review the information and provide comments.
And I think to Mike's comment, we probably need to be doing a Timberlines that's devoted to this issue, and will give the everyday residents and readers the opportunity to know about what's going on. And I think this is a very exciting thing. We would welcome the input. So I think we will absolutely look for opportunities when we're out talking to people to make sure we're bringing this up and they know what's happening in the community. And I think there's already been a lot of really good conversation about it, and people want to know when they can buy their homes, which is pretty good for Shay. So
Right.
I think we're all happy to hear that people want to live in Lone Tree. But I think that's a very good point, Mike, that we've got to go beyond just our traditional forums and review processes to make sure we're talking about it as we engage with our existing residents. And once they hear about the pickleball courts or potential, we'll have even more engagement. But great question. And anything else from council? I've got a couple of things. Justin, with the transportation master plan update, will that be including the capacity on Havana? We've already heard concerns about the capacity on that roadway or the need for expansion on that roadway. So that will be included as part of this, even though it's technically outside of.
Correct. So, if you look at some of the original planning documents, they always talked about the future improvements to Havana by the station up to the thing. So yes, that is included. The timing is obviously a lot of discussion and how all that lays out. But there's been a lot of design effort going in to make sure that the future needs of Havana can be implemented.
And will there be improved bike ped access along that roadway as well?
Correct.
Good.
Yes.
So it's a holistic look
Yep.
of capacity on that road system. I think the other thing I want to highlight is I very much appreciate the crossing connectivity. And I think one of the key places where we're going to have to be looking at this is the road, is the connectivity with the regional park.
Yes.
And that is, we need to make sure we get that right ahead of time, because there is, if I'm not mistaken, is there a roadway through a portion of connecting that whole regional park area?
Across.
That is
Right,
Yes, that
it
is correct. So that the
bisects it.
east-west collector road we showed does.
Yep. So that is extremely important, and I think and I know expensive. So, but we're going to have to make sure we get that right. The other, what about, and it may be in Appendix I as part of our technology. No, the EV charging infrastructure on where is that going to be addressed in this document?
Correct. So the initial thinking is that would be included as part of the Appendix I updates and the sort of the vision and planning to implement that on the east side, right? Again, it would not refer to what we're still able to do on the west side of the city. But yes, our current thinking is that would be rolled into the sustainability section that's included in there.
Great. And then I think we learned some really important lessons on the west side in the West Village. And I think we obviously want to make sure we're including all those great lessons that we learned if we're going back in and making pedestrian mobility improvements right now in the West Village, make sure we're incorporating all of those great lessons into what we're looking at doing on the east side. And as you mentioned, smart city technology is continuing to evolve and increase. And so is there a way to make Appendix I somewhat of a living document? This is going to be a 5-year potential build out. So how can we don't want to set in stone, and I'm not quite sure how we do that, but I would like you to think about that a little bit.
I think that's a great question. I do think all those appendices all have different life frames, right, based on
right.
So yes, I think that's certainly a great discussion as we develop those out.
Okay, that's all I had. Anything else, Donna, and anyone else?
No.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you both for being
Thank
here,
you.
and I want to thank Mr. Roberts and Mr. Simon for showing up and being part of our discussion. It means a lot to us to have you here, so thank you for doing that. And sitting so far away from us. We really appreciate that part.
Yes.
All right, moving on. This is an exciting win for us, a little bonus with our proposed temporary art installation, and kudos to our Arts Commission and to the Arts Center staff and Paul Ackerman for bringing this to our attention. So Paul is going to be presenting remotely, and are you ready to go? I think I see you there.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Council, thank you for the opportunity to present the Arts Commission's proposal here. As you saw in your packet, we were made aware of an artist named Coco Bayer, who has been installing these Hope Hearts around the Front Range. They're temporary street art pieces, and she's been doing this at no charge, just to spread this message of hope and love. And the Arts Commission is very much intrigued by it and seeks council approval to move forward with this project. You can see the pictures of some of the installations that have done. They've garnered a fair bit of publicity in Westward, in the Lone Tree Voice, and on a couple of the television stations as well. So what the council is proposing is to move forward with this project on the northwest side of the pedestrian bridge, where the mural project was going to go, and install a 12 by 12 Hope Heart in that location until, and as I said, it's a temporary installation that can be removed relatively easily with high pressure water. So that's the background. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to address them.
Yeah, Kath.
Hi, Paul. My only question was, is it just the heart? I can see in some of those other pictures that there were additional, additional things done. So is the proposal for the 12 by 12 to just the heart?
That's my understanding at this point. There are, if you go to Coco's Instagram feed, you can see a variety of different treatments. There were a couple of hearts this past month that were done with the Pride theme, where there was a rainbow treatment in the background color of the heart, but they all essentially are a heart with the word hope in the center of them.
So I would only want to know if it's going to look different than that.
Right. So Paul, when are these the colors that are being proposed as well? What is this, when we have a final kind of mock-up of what it's going to look like for us?
I've just today been in touch with Coco. She's going to do a drive-by look at the location tomorrow, and then we will be in touch again from there, and we can determine those sorts of details. We want to make sure at first that the location is accessible enough and that the surface is appropriate for the application, and make sure that technically this is a feasible surface and location to go forward. Right. And then we can get some sort of indication of colors and treatment and the rest of it. But we are asking for the largest size possible, the 12 foot by 12 foot.
Yep. Yeah, and I think we all would love to see it. Yeah. We all need a lot of hope. Any other thoughts or?
No, I mean, I think the message is very poignant. The question is, so just for clarity's sake, is it actually paint and then, right?
So or it's a biodegradable.
It's a separate thing that we apply to attach to it.
That's right. It's essentially a wheat paste. So it dissolves in water. It is organic. There is a glue component to it that helps it adhere to the wall.
And is there any concerns about it holding up in severe weather? Is that a concern too?
I don't think so. These have been going up since the spring, but that's a question I can certainly ask.
I just wanted to know. I like it conceptually though.
Yeah, I think there's strong support for moving forward, and we want to thank the Arts Commission for bringing this to our attention. And I think just the details, devil's always in the details, Paul, so we'd love to understand. And then how long, do we get to keep it up as long as we want? Or does the artist have it for a period of time? Or will it start fading in a period of time? I mean, just those type of questions, if you could just.
Absolutely. Coco did say that it is possible to do a more permanent installation. But of course that, at this point, these temporary ones are going in at no charge. Right. But that would be a different consideration if we were to want it on a more permanent basis.
Right, but what does semi-permanent mean, Paul? Is that
yeah, I need to get that information.
Yeah, and if we have an opportunity to go out and take a look at what the oldest Hope Heart that we can readily access, what that looks like in the area, it'd probably be worth taking a picture of that and kind of having us looking at how it's weathered over the period of time. But we love it. So
yes, yeah, absolutely.
We love it. And again, thanks for bringing it to our attention. So anything else we want to cover with Paul? Anybody? No? Okay. Well, Paul, thanks. Nice to see your face. Usually you're here with us. Do they not let you tonight?
Yeah, not today.
Even you get a break from us. All right.
Yeah.
Well,
thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Council.
And look, and again, please extend our thanks to the Arts Commission.
I certainly will.
Wonderful. Thanks. Okay, now now a sales tax simplification update from Kristen Baumgartner. Kristen, working so hard with the added responsibility of representing Lone Tree down at the Capitol. So thank you for that.
No problem. Well, good evening, Council. Very happy to be here tonight, and wanted to give you some exciting updates on where some of the progress has been made with the state and our sales tax simplification work. So just a quick reminder that back in 2017, House Bill 17-1216 established a legislative task force to study sales and use tax simplification and identify opportunities and challenges for revenue neutral solutions. And this was a committee that was formed. It had a 3-year commitment, and the task force was effective until July 1st of 2020. The original task force was 15-member task force. I've listed out the state representatives that served on that task force most recently. And as you know, CML appointed 4 representatives, and I've had the pleasure of being part of the task force for its first 3 years. With it expiring this year, House Bill 2010-22 was approved to extend the task force for 5 more years. We did just recently find out that we aren't going to meet in 2020 at the Capitol due to some budget restraints, but we are required to meet by July 16th of next year. And starting next year, we will have to meet 8 times annually as previously per the new House bill. During this year, though, we're continuing to monitor what's going on with Senate Bill 19006, which proposed and procured money for a centralized collection portal. And we also are continuing, once we start meeting next year, to look at new feasible options for additional simplification measures. So we're going to go into a little bit of detail about that centralized collection portal and some decisions that we're looking for some guidance from City Council on. So as a reminder, Senate Bill 19006 that was adopted last year was to develop an electronic sales and use tax simplification system for sales tax collection, and also to develop a GIS database system to maintain jurisdictional boundaries at the state level. After that got approved last year, it went out to procurement, and late last year, 2 contracts were awarded to 2 vendors. One was a vendor named MuniRevs that was responsible for putting together a single point of remittance portal, and one was called TTR, which was for the GIS database and rate and taxability matrix. Really good thing on both these companies. They're very well known. MuniRevs is a really well known municipal tax collection provider, which I was really happy that it's a company that works with governments exclusively for the most part. They know the complications of our sales tax system in Colorado. And so having that advantage, I think, is what's making this a reality today, and was able to happen so quickly versus someone maybe on the corporate side that isn't familiar kind of with the government complexities. And TTR is a national company that does a lot of GIS database work, and I've been really impressed with them as well. So other great news, this project actually came in under budget and is coming in on time. The state was able to take some of the money that they had procured for this and put it back into the state's budget this year. So that was great news as well. And we actually had a controlled launch of the sales and use tax system, which we're going to refer to that as the SUIT system, on May 6th of 2020. And what that means is that both of these systems are actually live. And they've selected a small group of vendors that are cross-jurisdictional that wanted to participate kind of in this trial. And they are actually filing their taxes through the system, through the state and all state collected municipalities. And so they're paying their taxes, it's filtering down. And then there were 7 home rule municipalities that agreed to participate in this initially. And so everyone's kind of testing out the system right now, but it is live and money's flowing through the system currently. They're looking to have both systems totally live for anyone to access on the state's website by the end of summer, but they really want to have enough participation from the home rule municipalities to have kind of a bigger impact once they launch this. Currently, 12 of the 71 home rule municipalities have signed up for it, so that's 17%. And I think they're looking to get to a critical mass of close to 50% before they want to launch it fully live. So now we're going to kind of dive into this SUIT system. So staff has participated in a lot of meetings and demos. I've been really involved in continuing to kind of work through the task force and provide feedback as we've kind of tested out this system. One thing I'm really excited about, the GIS system is really amazing, and I've been really impressed with how great that came out. Some important components, though, is that it will replace, previously there were multiple certified databases that taxpayers could go to use to rely on that information when they file their taxes. And this one system will replace all of those prior databases, which is nice because we only have to supply information to one vendor versus we were responsible for making sure our data was correct with all those other vendors previously. Also, this will replace kind of a hold harmless clause that a lot of jurisdictions have that says that if a taxpayer does use this GIS database and we would audit them and the data in the database was wrong, that they can't be punished for that because they were relying on something that we're responsible for supplying that data. So we will continue to update that GIS information through our internal staff, work with them, make sure our tax code's accurate, and then that'll be a great resource where there's one place for people to go. Also, all jurisdictional information will be included in the GIS system from the very beginning when this does go live, regardless of participation in suits. And this was something that I actually personally fought for because initially they weren't going to let the GIS data have your jurisdiction's data unless you rely on the system. And I said that that wasn't acceptable because people are going to rely on the system, and I don't want you to go out and if we haven't signed up yet, City of Lone Tree would have no data. And I didn't want them to think that we didn't then have a tax rate. And so we fought for that and got the state to agree with the work of myself and CML. We got them to agree to do that. So that was a huge win that I'm happy that we were able to get. And I think will make the system a lot more beneficial to everyone. And then lastly, to participate in the suit system, the only thing we have to do would sign an IGA with the Department of Revenue. So we're going to kind of go into that in a little more detail in the next slides. So, some pros that I see to partnering on this agreement is it allows our businesses with multiple locations one place to file their returns. And this has always been what we've been trying to accomplish with the Sales Tax Simplification Task Force. So it's really for businesses like an American Furniture Warehouse is a good example, where they do deliveries in all parts of the state. They can go one place, and anyone who's participating in the system, they can file their tax returns one place with one payment, and then the system filters it down to all the locations it needs to go to. The GIS system, again, is greatly increased, and it'll be a great resource to our businesses. Again, we'll be able to have that resource even without the suits agreement, but again, I think it's kind of a package deal that I think if we're willing to support it, it should kind of be an all-in support. Also, the system does have all the same capabilities as our city online system with multiple payment options available to the taxpayer, which means that they can, the taxpayer can pay their taxes through, direct debits, through ACH pulls, or through credit card payments. And there is a minimal cost that we only pay for transfer fees. So every time they transfer a payment to us, we would get charged $1. So that's not anticipated to be more than $20 per month, which is, again, really minimal. The state is fronting and paying for the software through Senate Bill 6. Also, additional pros, we will receive funds daily after the payment is settled. So there's only the delay. We have to wait, just depending on the type of payment, the normal clearing time for it to clear and be a settled payment. So that's usually a couple days, but we'll receive the payment on a daily basis after it's settled. We have full access to the information provided on the tax return and several system generated reports. We anticipate greater compliance by remote sellers, and that's a huge one, which I'll get into a little more details about the remote seller piece in a little bit. And then we can cancel at any time with 90-day notice. So this is something that if we would try it and it wasn't working out successfully, we could cancel the system. As far as limitations and challenges, there's just a couple, but I did want to point those out too. Currently, the system can only be used to file sales and use taxes. So for the City of Lone Tree, no lodging taxes or admissions taxes could be filed through this system. So if a taxpayer wanted to use this system and they had those two types of tax liability to the city, they would have to file an additional return through some other means with the city. They wouldn't be able to do it through this one system. The Muni Revs is working to develop that out, but because so many jurisdictions have so many different tax types, they didn't want to delay the whole launch of the system. So we focus on sales and use tax force first and hope to have other enhancements later. There is an additional cost if we want a direct interface with our city's accounting system. That's looking to range between $8,000 and $10,000. We think initially we would not. Annually? Annually. We think initially we would not need that interface because we can download it in an Excel format and upload that into our current accounting system. But as the use of this grew, we want to continue to evaluate that. And actually, Jackie, now that you say that, I'm not positive if that's an annual cost or not. So I'll follow up on that. Okay. But we're not recommending that we would do that initially, and we'd see kind of how that increased over time if it was necessary. And then also, sorry, back to the last slide, it will add some additional reconciliation process for internal finance staff so that it will not replace our current online system. It'll just be another way people can file their taxes. So we would currently still have to kind of monitor 2 systems because we think that our local vendors that aren't kind of multi-jurisdictional would probably continue to use our current system that they're already registered and used to accessing. A couple more. Customer service will be provided by the Colorado Department of Revenue. So since it's their system, if there is a problem, we have to refer them to the Colorado Department of Revenue staff. So that's not necessarily a limitation, but I think it's a challenge if we're getting the phone calls and having to balance that and having the high level of customer service we provide. So that is something that we'll have to continue to monitor. It will require our internal staff to push out new information to current taxpayers so that we can make sure we're letting people know about this option. And then the last thing, which I've talked to Linda about this as well, the agreement that we would sign does have a clause where it really limits liability for the Department of Revenue and the vendors, that if there would be some flaw in the system and the money disappeared, that we cannot go back and go to the state or these vendors. Now, we've talked a lot about that as a group about that's obviously not what anyone ideally wants, but with all software vendors, when we sign agreements with our vendors, there's some risk, there's going to be issues. The state obviously has a much more in-depth agreement with these vendors, and the state's using the system for their state collection, for their collections. And so I feel like it's a risk that's worth taking, in that the state has its best interest to make sure they've protected the system with the vendors they've chosen. And they've pretty much told us this isn't going to change. And so I think it's kind of weighing that. And again, Linda and I have been involved in discussions. I think we both feel comfortable that, you know, this would be okay to move forward with. So ultimately, staff does believe that the benefits of the system do outweigh the limitations and challenges with implementing. And you'll see later on that we are recommending that we consider this at a future time with City Council. Kind of changing gears a little bit. So that's one piece, is that we're looking for some guidance on starting to use this new system. Secondly, another reason why this is even more important than it's ever been before is that with the Wayfair decision that happened last year with remote sellers, the state has already put into effect a lot of different things so that the state of Colorado can implement requirements for remote sellers to file in the state. And last year with House Bill 19-1240, there were different things that the state enacted. That economic nexus is now established for anyone who does business in the state with over 100,000 in taxable transactions, regardless if they have physical locations. There's also an exemption for in-state retailers of 100,000 or less, that they don't have to follow kind of these new rules until this GIS is launched. And then also, as of October 1st last year, marketplace facilitators, so people like Amazon that have people who participate in Amazon, Amazon actually has to remit taxes for all those sellers to the state of Colorado. So when House Bill 19-1240 came out and the state could implement this for the state of Colorado and all the state collected taxing entities, they asked that the home rule jurisdictions not force these same type of rules on vendors because it would jeopardize some of the provisions of the Wayfair ruling, that the state could get challenged if some of us kind of went individually and tried to do this on our own. So we committed to voluntary compliance until a single point of remittance system was developed. So now we have that with the suit system, and we're hoping then that by home rule municipalities participating in this, that undue burden criteria per the Commerce Clause will be alleviated. And CML is recommending, if the suits agreement is approved by home rule jurisdictions, that we update our sales and use tax ordinance to have similar provisions of House Bill 19-1240, and that we then can enforce that on a home rule basis. So the second piece to this, next slide, Jay, is that we would also look for some ordinance changes if we want to sign up for the suits agreement. Because another important part of the Wayfair ruling was that you needed to create very uniform definitions of products and services. And if we remember, the city updated our sales and use tax ordinance last summer to all of the CML proposed standardized definitions, kind of in preparation for this. But if the city decides to participate in the suit system, CML is recommending now that we make some additional changes to the standardized definitions for items such as remote sellers, economic nexus, et cetera, that weren't part of our code previously, but we can now enforce those things with having a centralized remittance portal. Next slide. So the ordinance revisions would allow would allow us to collect taxes from two types of businesses: for marketplace facilitators who collect on behalf of third parties, and for businesses that are only connected to our city by an economic presence versus a physical presence. And so the ordinance changes are pretty straightforward. We'll continue to kind of review those, but really it's just setting up so that we can enforce this ability to collect from remote sellers. Next slide. So really, I kind of went through that fast. I know it's a ton of information. I'm happy to talk individually more on this, but I think this is more important than ever to try to look at ways we can leverage additional tax revenue for the city. With everything that's going on, and then also with the increase of people online shopping, having this ability to collect from remote sellers, I think is really critical. And so I think that the city should consider looking at moving in these directions so that we can leverage all the tax revenue possible, and also to continue to be supportive of the sales tax simplification that we've been very invested in over the last several years. The next steps would be that we would bring the suits agreement for consideration for approval by City Council. We're targeting next month. I will continue to work with Linda's office to draft proposed ordinance changes. I think they'll pretty much be in line with what CML has recommended. They've given us a lot of guidance to work for on that. Again, that would be an ordinance change, so it would have to come to council in 2 readings, but that we would look to do the first one possibly in August. And then we would work with the Colorado Department of Revenue to implement and go live with all of this in the fall. So that was a lot of information. I asked if anyone has any questions, and then want to just get some general guidance if you're okay with us continuing kind of the next steps.
Great, thanks. Okay, our technology expert to my left. What do you think, Kat?
Love the daily remittance. Is that something that comes directly to us? Do you have to go get it online?
It's electronic.
Sorry.
The transfer.
So the transfer back to the city, does that happen automatically, or do they create like a bundle and you have to go out and get it?
The money comes automatically.
Okay.
We have to go in and pull reports on a daily basis.
No, that's ideal for lots of reasons. But that sounds like, I mean, if you're happy with the who they've chosen and what's there, it sounds like it met most of the criteria that we asked for. So it sounds like a good, and anything we can take off of you guys as far as the technology piece over time is just better. So yeah, I'm super excited to see the progress.
Mike, any questions?
Just a broad question. What's the overall impact in terms of this as relates to the sales tax collection in the city of Lone Tree?
We don't really know that yet, Councilmember Anderson. It's really hard to kind of determine on our current tax returns because some taxpayers file a consolidated return. So like Nordstrom files one return that has their online sales and their in-person sales. Amazon, same thing. They file a return for their online sales versus their sales at their store in the mall. So trying to pull out on those, we don't know, but we will continue to look kind of on once we have more new licenses, we can track those and see, and we've seen a huge increase in remote seller licenses over the last year. So that's something we're continuing to try to pull all that data. It won't be as big of an impact to us as it would for larger jurisdictions that have just more residents and more people getting goods delivered to their home. But again, I think anything that helps over the next several years will be appreciated, but we'll continue to track that. I don't have the exact numbers at this time.
Yeah, I am so glad. This sounds so much better than it did in the beginning. So thank you for your work. It's been immense. I had a couple of questions. One with Amazon in particular, because it seems to me that at some point in the last few weeks, and maybe it was the May swap over, more things are coming in with 5% tax instead of 6.8125. So I don't know if it's a particular group of sellers and we're not enrolled in this program and that's why, or if something is changed there, but I think as soon as we can implement that, that would be great.
And we'll definitely continue to watch that as well.
And one last question about the liability. So if there's a glitch and there's liability, I get that we have no recourse, but if there's fraud, it almost seems like, you know, there shouldn't be, but is that also excluded?
We will look at that in more detail. I think it was though, Linda. I think it pretty much relieved them of any liability, but we'll continue to
Okay.
assess and
Yeah,
come back with
it
more
kind of
details.
is what it is, I guess.
Jay?
Yeah, and along the same lines of the Amazon question, I know as Amazon Marketplace and Facebook Marketplace become real prominent, I'm glad they're addressing that because that's revenue that could slip through the cracks easily, I think, through the system. So good to see.
Okay, I have a couple questions. One, I think you answered. Has Linda seen the IGA? Linda, have you seen the IGA? Okay, great. So you already started to look at it. What if the state, so right now the state is paying for the software. What guarantee do we have that the state will continue to pay for the software? And is that in the IGA? And what would the potential cost to us be if, let's say, they decide as in a budget cut that they say no to this? I'd like to understand what that implication, financial implication, no reason not to do it, but I just want to be aware of it. And then the last question is, do you have a sense of how long it's going to be before we have a critical mass of municipalities that are opting into the, has it been something that's been discussed by the finance directors?
Yes, the CML has been really involved in with their sales tax simplification kind of internal task force, and the Colorado Department of Revenue has been putting out kind of weekly updates on who's interested. And right now, it seems that about 30% additional are in the process of doing what I'm doing tonight, of working with our counsels, our lawyers, and working through things. And so if all of that goes well, I think that it's likely that we could see this by the end of the summer or early fall. But it seems like people are very interested in the system, and there's already been some larger municipalities like the city of Golden that they signed up already. So it's nice to see. Initially it was just some really small kind of mountain communities, and it's slowly getting where some of the metro areas taking more hold. It's just getting through the council and the process of what it takes to get approved.
Right. So, and it sounds like the only cost will be staff time. Additional cost is staff time associated with it. That's correct. Right.
And the transfers or whatever.
Oh yeah, and then maybe up to $20 a month per thing. So I think the biggest question is what Wynn hit on is the fraud issue and the liability. And I get the sense you have is it's a take it or leave it type of thing. I would just encourage CML to start push. We have one of our strong advocates here on that a little bit. If we can get enough municipalities at least to push back on the fraud part of it, I would like to see that there. So, but all systems good, move. That sounds very good. Thank you. And again, thanks for your great work. An added responsibility, but very much appreciated. So thanks.
Thank you.
All right, now public health order update and Bill Medina. And do I see Bill?
Good evening, Mayor and City Council. Since last time we met, the state has made a few changes to the public health orders, so I wanted to briefly cover the highlights of those changes. So if we go to the first slide here, on the 1st of July, they released the 8th amended Safer at Home order, and that provided for a method for professional sports to resume. Libraries across the state are now open to customers in their facilities as opposed to just curbside service. And then it also permitted realtors to resume open houses. Something that was also interesting was that they closed bars, any bar that does not serve food from a licensed retail establishment. So I think that's kind of a lesson that the opening of the economy is not going to be a completely straight trajectory. We're going to see starts and stops. The other big news that happened was, and probably more importantly for the city of Lone Tree, was the approval of the Douglas County ordinances on June 26th. So we had a large gathering and event venues ordinance that allowed, or a variance that allowed up to 250 outdoors and 175 indoors. It allowed libraries to open at 50% capacity up to 175. And then theaters and bowling alleys were allowed to open up to 175 indoors. One of the biggest parts of this is the variance calculates capacity based on 28 square foot per person, while the state order calculates 144 square feet per person. So this has a huge impact. And for example, at the Arts Center, with the Douglas County variance, they'll be able to open their terrace somewhere at around 100, and with the main stage a little bit over that capacity. So that's really important for us. And then just an update on the pool, the Cook Creek pool. It is no longer using a reservation system, and they are opening on a first come first served basis with a morning session and an afternoon session, and they are also covered under the Douglas County ordinance. So there's no questions here. We'll go on to the next big news, which is the announcement of the next phase of opening up, which is Protect Our Neighbors. And so this phase allows opening of all businesses at 50%, up to 50%, and 500 people, with the still imposition of social distancing requirements. For every 4 weeks that a community is in this phase, they're able to increase by 5%, assuming that they maintain the metrics that I'll discuss here in a second. In order to qualify, the communities must demonstrate in treatment, transmission, testing, and tracing a certain level of transmission or capability to respond to outbreaks. And then they have to submit a mitigation and containment plan that is approved and endorsed by county commissioners, mayors, law enforcement, emergency management, as well as local public health administrators. So I'm going to real quickly talk about a couple of the metrics. So the first two have to deal with hospital capacity. You have to maintain the ability to accept 20% surge in hospitalizations over a 2-week period in hospitalizations, and have 2 weeks worth of personal protective equipment on hand. Those in Douglas County, we're easily meeting those metrics currently. The next two metrics are concerning transmission. The first one looks at a stable or declining level of hospitalizations, being defined as no more than 25% increase over a 14-day period, or no more than 2 admissions on any given day in the last 14 days. And we're meeting that metric in Douglas County as well. The second metric takes a look at having fewer new cases, and this can be measured in 2 ways. The 2-week cumulative incident rate per 100,000 below 25, which currently we are not meeting that. Douglas County is at 31.5. The second way is to have a 2-week positivity rate of testing of less than 5% with a sufficient amount of testing within the community, which is defined as, for Douglas County, that would require us to do 262 tests per week, which we are currently not meeting. However, our positivity rate is below 5%. And then the last 4 metrics have to deal with the public health authority's ability to test and trace. So they have to be able to surge to test 15 people per 10,000 per day if there were an outbreak. And for Douglas County, that would mean 525 per day. The health authority has to be able to investigate 85% of new cases within 24 hours. They have to be able to surge that investigation capability to 8.7 cases per 100,000 residents in any given day. So that would be 31 cases for our case in Douglas County. And then finally, the health authority has to demonstrate the ability to test the close contacts of any individuals that are involved in an outbreak. So right now, I think we probably would be falling short of meeting all 8 metrics, but we certainly are looking pretty good here in Douglas County. If you fall out of compliance with any of the 8 metrics, you have 3 weeks to implement your mitigation plan and return to compliance. I think something that's kind of interesting here is that any county that has already received 8 variances for a specific event or sector cannot request any more variances and must move into the Protect Our Neighbors phase. And so in Douglas County, we have already received our 8 variances. And then finally this week, we should be seeing the final details the application process from the state in order to ensure that we have all the details on how to apply. So that's kind of the wave top view of the protect our neighbors. And if there's any questions, I'll be happy to address them.
Any questions for Bill? Wynn.
I had one, Bill, thank you. With regard to the test and trace, there, I think the number you said was 525. Is that the source person that's 525? Because I think if you have, you know, somebody might have appeared in a large crowd and all of a sudden you've got, you know, 525 2 times removed from one initial source potentially.
Yeah, so that 525 number is a surge capability for testing in a given day. And we have not come anywhere close to testing that many people in Douglas County, although today on the call with Tri-County Health, they did feel confident that there was that amount of capacity within the medical system here in the county.
Thanks.
Anything else?
Hey, Bill, my only question was with regards to the bars being closed. How does that affect our breweries, or does our variance cover that?
So Douglas County does not have a variance as it relates to bars, but any brewery, bar, distillery that serves food from a licensed retail vendor is able to stay open. So all the ones that are here in the city, based on my discussions with Jeff and others, do meet that requirement.
Lone Tree Brewery doesn't serve any food. So
Food trucks.
Oh,
Food
that's
trucks,
right.
yes.
Have to come.
And don't ruin it for them.
Okay, sorry. I want to make sure. God help us if we have to close down.
I know, I was like,
Okay.
really?
No, okay, so that was the only one I couldn't tell if that was.
Yeah, and we don't-
within-
We did a kind of a run through and don't have any others that have any issue.
And then my second question was, how was the public, or was the public notified of the changes at Cook Creek Pool and what's required there? Now without having reservations and going to a just show up situation?
You know, I can't answer that question. It began on the 2nd of July and it is on their website, but I don't know if it was pushed out in social media. We can check
I'm
on.
sure Urban probably did something, but it was amazing. There was a huge line. Did you guys see it? That very first morning of people and families waiting to get in. So somehow the news got out. I was just curious if we had done. I think it'd be great if we could ask our team to maybe get something out just so that people aren't confused as things change. I think that's super helpful.
Right. Yeah, we can do that.
And then my last question is just around the new numbers for public gatherings or large gatherings. Does that apply to people's homes?
Wow. I honestly don't know that. I would assume that the indoor gathering requirements would apply to a private residence as well as a public location. So I have not seen that specifically addressed, but I assume that it does apply to private residences.
We would assume then the same for your backyard being considered an outdoor portion of a private residence?
Yes, yeah.
So then it's the 28
So
square
28
feet
square feet
per person in Douglas County.
Right, correct. And I'll look into that. I'll verify that and get back with you, but I'm pretty sure it does apply.
Thank you. That's all for me.
Thanks, Kath. Anything else? All right. Bill, just thanks for staying on top of all of this, rapidly changing. It's wonderful to have one person we can go to help us decipher what is changing so much. Have you, I understand there is a special interim meeting of the Tri-County Health Department Board of Directors tomorrow, and one of the items potentially under discussion may be a mandatory masking ordinance, and I know Douglas County would also look to be exempt from that. Have you heard of anything else that's going to be on that agenda for tomorrow?
No, I have not. And I think that is because one of the components of this is that the community needs to demonstrate that how they're going to increase compliance with mask wearing requests to transition and to protect our neighbors. So I think that's going to be the nature of the discussion tomorrow.
Okay. Have you heard of any additional communities instituting mandatory masking ordinances?
I have not, but I'll take a look. I haven't looked in a couple days, so I'll look and see if anybody else is moving in that direction.
I know the city of Englewood approved it yesterday, I believe. But anyway, just curious where there's been a lot of discussion nationally, and I think on this issue, and wondering what may happen in the state of Colorado regarding it. So anyway, they're still required at the indoor at our mall, and we always want people be safe, be healthy, wear your mask. Okay, thanks, Bill. And with that, I think the last thing is consent agenda on our study session, you guys, which includes minutes from June 16th, 2020 regular city council meeting and claims for the period of June 9th through June 29th, 2020. Do I have any questions from council on consent? Nope. Okay. All right. Well, we have hit the appointed hour, and we are going to open our regular meeting and then take a break. But we are going to open our regular meeting and ask our city clerk to quickly take roll call.
Councilmember Anderson.
Here.
Councilmember Carpenter.
Present.
Councilmember Shaw.
Present.
Mayor Pro Tem Brunick.
Here.
Mayor Malay.
Here. So a quorum is present, and we will be convening in executive session. I am going to ask for a motion, but ask our city attorney, Linda Michow, to state the reasons for our exec session.
Mayor and City Council, the purpose of the executive session is pursuant to Article 4, Section 6A of the Home Rule Charter and pursuant to CRS 246402-4E to determine positions relative to issues subject to negotiations, to receive reports on negotiation progress, and to instruct negotiators, as well as pursuant to Section 6A3 of the Charter and 246402-4B of Colorado Revised Statutes for matters of attorney-client privilege, all relating to the conveyances of certain open space and parks parcels from Rampart Range Metropolitan District to the city of Lone Tree.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, we are going to move into exec. We're going to take one brief minute of recess to allow for personal matters. And we'll allow our guests to clear the